Oh, there it is.
Yes, sir. Dave Clemens, nice to meet you.
Well, should we start while John is working on trying to get the screen working, projector working? Let's call the meeting to order. We have a quorum present,
John Bickle.
Jennifer Nisbet.
and Dean Groves and Dan Clement,
Clemens.
a new member. Welcome to the club.
Thank you.
Also in attendance, Randy Bodelson, who is a liaison between the PPAC board and the subcommittee. Laura Leroy with Gateway Services District, and Jen Lewis from KW Property Manager. And sir, I forget your name. Ed. Ed's a GIS specialist, and he's joining us today. So first on the agenda is election of officers. Apparently, we need a chair and a vice chair. And I guess we need to have nominations and an election.
Need to open the floor and then we'll first do the chair. So if we need to there needs to be a motion to nominate someone to be chair. And then somebody will need to second that.
Seconded.
Okay, are there any other
yeah.
nominations? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you for the nomination. Thank you for your support. We need a vice chair. Don has indicated he has resigned from the committee soon when he moves north. His house is for sale, so he's kind of filling in for a while until he's no longer here. So I would think, Don, that you would not be
No.
interested in vice chair.
Are nominations open at this time?
Nominations are open.
Jennifer?
I'll second that motion. Are there any other nominations? All in favor of Jennifer Nisbet as vice chair?
Aye.
Unanimous, all in favor. Okay, thank you very much. Congratulations, Jennifer. You feel like that was a railroad job or what? Everybody take one step back. We have to have a pledge of allegiance. I don't know where there's a flag. Can you tell me?
Thanks. I know, I was talking, they keep moving it on us.
We'll get a picture of the flag.
I can go get it from inside.
Mark, oh, no, Mark. It was like in the back hallway.
We don't need, no, we'll just, we know what there's one that direction.
Yeah, there's one at the right.
Why don't we stand in-
There's a folded, there's at least a folded one in there.
All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Already had the roll call. Are there any public comments? Anyone on the remotely? Okay, no comment. Why don't we go right to approval of minutes? The February 6th minutes were distributed actually for the last meeting we didn't have a quorum, so we didn't actually have the meeting. But the minutes have been distributed. Don't know if anyone has had any comments on those minutes. Hearing none, is there a motion to accept the minutes as presented? Thank you.
So that was Jennifer and Don.
And,
minutes?
seconded by Don.
Okay.
All in favor of accepting the minutes? Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you.
If you want to eliminate the echo, you could probably mute your microphone because it's getting picked up on mine. Don't mute your speakers though.
Let's see how that works. Okay, financial report. I guess, Jennifer, Laura, I guess I need technical help here.
I'm going to this here.
Yeah.
Nope, Teams. Open the meeting. The arrow up here. I'll go back to here. Are you using the microphone on here? Did you plug something in?
I did originally and then I unplugged.
Back to Teams. Here. To more settings. Base settings. Here. Yeah, your internal microphone over here. You can click there. And it's weird because when you mute it, shows. Once you mute your speakers, then let's turn it on.
Thinking that'll work.
I'm still hearing your speakers
How's that?
better.
Good. Okay. So, we have no financial report yet. A budget has been circulated. Actually, it's based on last year's allocation of costs that were, previously approved by the feedback board. We'll be discussing that at a future meeting, but we need to use that as a guide, as a tool for proposing a budget for next year. Hi.
Next year being 23 or 24?
It would be for 24, right? So why don't we go for items for discussion? First item is capital improvement plan discussion. This is something I think is being developed ultimately by PPAC. Is that right, Randy?
Yeah, collectively, there is a look at trying to develop an overall budget for some of the future things. So Jennifer might ask you about your up-to-date list of projects as an example. And then at some point from the staff, we'll need to pull in how old are certain roads and those types of things, so that maybe there could be a longer term, 5-year, 10-year look forward in terms of needed maintenance or replacement.
That's the question, because when I look at this, it looks like it's part of an overall reserves plan, because I saw that it was put together by a reserve advisor.
Could you pull this down? I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I can't.
That's okay. It looks like it's part of an overall plan from reserves advisor for a reserve study of some sort.
I think they'll end up using it for both, but this is actually for us, for our budget, for you guys. So if there's anything that you're gonna want to do for the next fiscal year, as well as any, like Dean stated, the future projects, we want to make sure that we get them on our capital plan for you guys for your budget. So, and
Okay.
ultimately it will, if we need to fund reserves, planning ahead, so we don't hit everybody in the assessments for that year, then that's better too. So it's kind of a combination of both.
Okay, because I've worked with reserves advisors before. I recognize the format and everything. and
Yep.
So I knew that Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, but we're really doing both the shorter term.
It's 4 hours. Yeah, it's for
Okay.
next year as well as going forward.
Okay, that helps. Thanks.
Sure.
I have a question though, Laura. When, there are some things that I would consider are maintenance costs, not capital costs.
Correct.
And so is there a threshold or a dollar value that helps define?
It's twofold. Anything that's, like you said, would be like a maintenance cost. It doesn't matter what the threshold is. If it's either something new or if it's going to extend the life of the asset, then it's considered capital, or at least can be discussed to be considered capital. And anything over $2,500 would go into this plan then. So like if you're looking to add lights, signs, things like that, those are new assets, so that would be capital.
So then Jennifer, you had been working on a, spell your language, updated potential funding project list. And it would seem to me that that would feed right into this. So,
New definition, absolutely.
so perhaps we should take that item out of order and,
Okay.
and discuss what's on that, what's currently on that list, and see if we want to add or delete.
And I have Scott Sharnock's, previous list too,
Okay.
of what was, sent for 2022.
Okay, we had updated it. May not have to make quickly, I think, the site plan, I don't think we're going to get that for the agenda, because there's so much going on this floor. We only have 2 hours, so anyway, that's okay. This one, what we did, Jen, was we took that list and we updated it. And what we also did, was we ended up removing quite a few things, and we were very focused on just a few items.
Okay.
So, we don't have numbers associated with the vast majority of the projects yet. What we were trying to do was to fill into each of these, a potential cost based on the line of steps that each of the owners, would be putting together. We have not made a lot of progress with that. So I don't really have an updated number per se.
Okay. If you can share that with me, and I can take a look at it. The annual meetings doing this now, so I can really start focusing on the budgets and capital improvements for people.
Okay, there were a number of things on the list for the capital improvement plan that were not on our list.
Okay.
And what I was taking that to be was more long-term reserves. So that wouldn't have been part of our plan, because these reserves are not used for short-term type projects. So based on the fact that we're going to be looking at this from a short-term as well as a longer-term capital perspective, we do probably need to merge some of the stuff together.
Yeah.
I do want to mention also that the list that's in the agenda is not meant to be like, it was just suggestions. So you may or may not want to choose those items. You may want to do different items. You may want different dollar amounts. So it was just mostly to kind of thought provoking. So it wasn't meant to be a list of this is what you have to put dollars for.
Well, let me ask you a question about that, because again, I've worked with reserve advisors before. And to start off the whole planning process, we actually sat down and said, here are our capital assets.
Mm-hmm.
And here's what, and then what they did, they defined out what each asset was, what the usable life was, how old it was, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And then they came out with, okay, for reserves, because you want to make sure that you can replace roofs and replace, normal long-term capital type stuff. That's when they put together the tables that I saw in there.
Mm-hmm.
So I made an assumption, it sounds like it may not be a good assumption, was that there was a whole study done that backed up the information that was contained in the 4 or 5 pages that were in the agenda package.
That was the result of the most recent study that they did. Yes. So that's a safe assumption. Let me just find that. And
Because it would be really nice, I think, to understand, I mean, for instance, there was one thing in there about the guards. I forgot what they call a house or something. I mean, it was kind of an interesting term. And it was like $12,000 or something for renovation, but I don't know whether that's something we should be taking on, because I don't know what renovation means. Very often that's like making sure that, replacing the roof or something, and that's not something we would want to take on. But there's stuff in there about signage.
Well, but the guardhouse renovation the guardhouse is a district asset.
Yes.
And I know we did have the roof replaced since I've been here, so it's been within the last 3 years, the roof has been replaced. So this would just be like inside. I know we're making some changes. I think they're getting a different water heater.
Yeah, and that's not
It's a
stuff our
whole,
team
like the
would-
generator, things like that.
Yeah, that's not necessarily stuff that our team would be involved with, or I
Like-
would think.
I think it was
But-
it was assigned to you because it's for the guardhouse, the guardhouse is a safety and a
Mhm.
safety thing, which would be your team. So I guess I think the idea was, and this could flow up to Pelican too. You could just say, this is something that we don't want to take on and ask Pelican to include that in their number or PPAC to include that in their numbers. And that's completely up to you if that's
Okay.
what you'd like to do.
Yeah,
But I think it fell in here because it was part of the guardhouse, which is a safety
it's
thing.
the
So-
whole- Yeah, okay. Okay.
Or-
Hard to
Hang
see
on,
enough,
Chelsea.
see the whole thing, so I don't know.
All right, Chelsea, go ahead.
The point of bringing this to the subcommittees is your PPAC looks to you all for projects and funding and things like that. And so the point is to plan ahead instead of a project spring on us and we have to find the funding, either pulling it from a reserve or another line item. So this is more of a planning process. And then thinking of any initiatives that you guys may have in the next, year to 10 years. We want to get them on the list and then start to allocate funding. Like the guardhouse as a perfect example. We know we just put a roof and a typical roof has a 20-year life on it. So we want to start budgeting now instead of 17 years from now sprung unintended expense sprung on us at that time. So this was an opportunity for you all to review what PPAC has in front of them, what the board has in front of them, review the projects. If there's anything new that you guys would like to see, ultimately PPAC has the recommendation to the board. So you guys would be making your recommendation to PPAC. So now is really, we're starting budget, we're starting the CIP, and we look forward to your guys' input.
Okay, yeah, I understand that. That's fine. That's fine. It's just a little different than, what a lot of people do. That's fine. I can do that. It's not a problem. So what we need to do is just merge these two things.
Right.
What's the best way of doing this from a administrative perspective? Meaning, is there somebody who owns the overall list that I should be submitting our list to say, hey, let's add this in?
It's me.
Okay. Okay,
But I got Scott's list, the one set up the time to go over
sure,
in my office and we can,
sure.
I can share you what Scott had that he presented in 2022. Because one of the items is the new street light at the intersection.
Right.
Pelican Shore. So some of that stuff we can eliminate.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay,
And then we can pass.
right after this, we have 2 seconds, maybe we can just set the time?
Yeah.
Okay,
And I had given you some input on the
Right.
list that you did have.
right,
And so some of that is just guessing numbers, but
sure, but that's.
but therefore, some new signage is other information in there
Right.
too. So.
Right, yeah, I actually have an updated list.
Oh, I have a request. I forgot to mention this earlier. Because Marilyn is new to doing the minutes for all of the subcommittees, so until she learns your voices, which she knows mine because I talk a lot. If you could please say your name, even if we're having if you're having a back and forth, that's fine, but if you could just state your name before you make comments so that she can have that for the minutes,
You going to do that?
yeah, you don't need to do them. We're paying to have them done. So please say your name before you comment and then she'll know. She'll learn everybody's voices. It'll take a few months, but she'll get it.
Yeah, no problem with it.
Thank you.
Okay, then.
And then, one more thing, sorry. Kind of why I asked about who made the motions, if you wouldn't mind doing that before you take a vote too. If you could say I have a motion from whoever and a second from whoever and then take the vote, because that'll really help her when she goes to do them as well. I try to write them down, but sometimes I miss them.
Okay, so this is D. So let's go back to the items for discussion. The second item is set wiser post-order workshop date. We had spent some time going over the post orders several weeks back, 5 to 6 weeks ago. We didn't quite finish. we were going to, continue our individual commenting. I don't know if they've been assembled and provided to anyone at this point, but it strikes me that some of the things we still had a question about. Dawn, you and I had some thoughts about what was and what was not included. Danny, you haven't seen them, I doubt, right? So I would think it would be helpful for you to get up to speed. We can provide those to you to take a look. And this gentleman is from Weiser. Mark. And you had attended the last meeting also, so that was good. But one of the things, okay,
Don Bickles. My biggest concern with post orders, it's more on wiser procedures, company policy procedures than it is Pelican substance, what needs to be done in here. And that's my biggest thing. 90% of that post orders is just that. I've read them over numerous times. We don't address things, as I mentioned, just to bring it up. So since they're here, post orders indicate that if you're supposed to check open garage doors and let the people know that their garage doors is open during the daytime hours. But you can't do it at night. If you drive by at 1 o'clock in the morning and the garage door is open, we don't address that. It's okay to leave it open. It's just backwards. And there are so many things in that. And I read over the contract that was signed by Weiser and PPAC and CDD. And I think there's some issues in there. I think we can specify what some of the requirements are, not just the CDD tell us that the only thing they can do is check street lights and CDD property and man the gate. I think according to that, when I read into it, first couple of paragraphs, that there's a lot of leeway that we could add things to their duties. And I think we should, because I think it's a security issue.
Right, this is Danny. I do need to see the actual contract as well as the postal. I've been involved many years, multiple companies, in writing contracts and hiring and firing security services. I need to see the contract to see what they have contracted with and what they can do. So I know there's comments about they should do this, should do that. They see it on a customer's portal, but that's not what we signed up for, and vice versa. So having that document in front of me, I can do all that review. Come up with a report. I've already made some comments on some documents that I received, and I see some of the similar issues. So yes, the contract is important to see what they've actually signed up for. If they've inherited anything from the previous contracts, or is this contract or this post orders coming from another entity and they just put in little tidbits to associate with our community.
I will clarify that the contract is for gate access security, not patrols in the neighborhood, not patrols anywhere around. The contract itself is for them to be at the guardhouse, controlling who comes and goes from Pelican Preserve. That's the contract.
Right here.
So this is where we're talking about adding additional services. And if that's the case, we are most likely, we can't just revise the post orders. It's something we may need to revisit on the contract as well, because that's not part of what they agreed to do per the contract. They did not get hired as a security company. I'm doing air quotes because you guys can't see that. They were hired for gate access control. That's what the contract is for. We have asked them to perform additional duties above and beyond what is in their contract, which they have done. There are some things where we've had discussions with the attorney that, like the neighborhood patrols, not district assets. So if that's something that you would like them to do, it's our opinion that the HOA should have a separate contract for them to be patrolling inside the neighborhoods and doing those type of things, because your homes are not district assets. Our concern in our contract is our assets. So we're not opposed. We don't disagree that they should be doing those things. It just would need to be a contract that is not the district's contract. That would be something that you would have to work out with the association.
Understood. Again, this is Danny again. I didn't have any access to that contract.
Sure, I asked Georgia to send it to you.
Okay, yeah, I definitely need to get that.
Yep.
I believe in the contract, it does say, because I definitely had it with me, but I didn't bring it today. I did have a, as directed by the board,
Correct, but we cannot be directing them on a district contract to perform services on non-district assets. That's where it gets tricky.
Okay, well, I think that really needs to be looked at because if it's I know this is not a secure community. It's far from that, from the issues that happen. And I'm concerned about the security of Pelican Preserve.
Understood.
Maybe something needs to be done with the town center entity because those are bifurcated. Pelican Preserve and Town Center are two different entities. Shouldn't be. It should be one entity. And I think that the security company maybe needs to have additional duties in Town Center because we're having problems.
And again, that's not a district asset, so that would be something that you would need to take up on the HOA side. We do not own the town center or the recreational vehicle storage or the golf course. So any of those things, if you would like to have additional security there, that's something that PPCA will have to take up with Wiser or whoever they want to hire.
I
So
agree with that, but I think we need to work in that direction and get that done for the next contract signing.
that would not go on the districts, that would not go on the district's contract because they are not our assets.
Supplemental
Yeah.
contract
Yes.
needs to be done.
Yeah.
Yep.
because
Yeah, I don't disagree. But again, that's not something that the district would have on their contract. That would be a separate contract that you would have with Wiser through
you're not gonna
PPCA.
get the individual HOAs to, as many as we have in here, to contract. So I think it needs to
Sure.
be.
No, it's the master association.
You know, we're all paying taxes, we're all paying dues. There's gotta be a way to work around that rather than. We can make it a lot easier.
Sure, similar to what we do with Ameriscape, where the PPCA has a contract with Ameriscape and the district has a contract with Ameriscape, so therefore all of Pelican Preserve is covered. I'm sure we can figure something out where PPCA can have an additional or a supplement to the district's contract where they are responsible for non-district assets. So, as I we're not opposed to that, it's just that it would not go under the district's contract. That would have to be something separate.
And down, keep in mind that if this gets updated with relevant information, that it will get put on the website, then everybody will have access to go and look at it. And we promote that and then try to get some feedback from the community. And for Daniel's information, some of what we tried to accomplish with post orders and looking at them and again is as an example, somebody would run into and destroy a gate, the arm of a gate. And some weeks, months later, PPAC would get a bill for $800. And there were no longer, and sometimes there was a police report, sometimes there wasn't. There would generally no longer be video of who actually hit that. So some of what we put into those was get a police report every time and do not erase the video. So don't get rid of the evidence. Let the people who've done this damage be accountable for it. So simple things like that, in my opinion, were some of the most important things we're trying to get on.
Agreed.
Who's erasing the video?
They merge it.
The DVR? There are no more tapes. Everything's on DVR, so that's all hard drives. So nothing, no video, but at least 30 days should be erased. It has to be done manually. No one should be doing manual
We would never.
deletion of anything in that computer. So that's another problem that I would have. From a security standpoint, is that unauthorized access to that portion of material of this equipment.
Dan, I think what Randy was saying is that, and what Mark is trying to say is that it sounds like the DVR itself auto deletes after 30 days. Cause I'm sure they only have so much storage because we have the same with ours too. So if we have an incident, somebody would need to download that information to make sure it doesn't automatically get removed from the DVR. We are not receiving any incident reports at the district, and also we surprise get a bill too. And it's like, where did this come from? We had no idea anything even happened. So, and it's a district asset.
I'd have to look at that. I'm very familiar with the DVR.
I did security before
So,
yeah, in a previous life as well. Yes.
Make
Yeah.
a change and reduce.
Well, it just depends on how much storage they have as well. I mean, the drive may not be big enough, but the requirement is that we only need to keep 30 days of stuff. So it would just be I think we put the onus on Wiser that if there's an incident to download the data from that incident and keep it separate. So that way it doesn't get deleted after the 30 days.
I'd have to look at that.
addition, Don, but have an addition, couple comments. And that number one is, the police reports. Let's start off with the Fort Myers PD overtime enforcement. I've not seen any reports since these till January, last of January, so I don't know if they're in here or not. They pick up the stat sheets, they drop them off at the guard house, and I don't receive them, so we've gone through this for years, it's just not being done. Second thing about security or police reports is there's incidents happening in here. And, one of them particularly just happened not too long ago, where apparently an impaired golf cart driver ran head on into a car going the wrong way. Where is that report? Don't we get daily reports? And
We didn't get anything.
I didn't know about it until someone shared it to me from a Facebook.
yeah, no, it's no one.
I don't know what you shared with me, so we got no incident report, no police report. That would be a question for the security company, that's what we're paying.
I mean,
So-
why, since they're here, why don't we have a security report on that?
You should have a report on that, and it's a police board call.
I think this, where we're running into some issues, I don't know where the reports are going, but I'm not getting them.
There's no one to push into.
Yeah, we've asked multiple times, so.
Yeah,
And
Don, Sid, and I actually remember that.
We met with him and told him, and I replied to an email saying, this email authorizes this list to receive the reports, and nothing has changed.
Why not just make a daggone report and hand it to somebody? Because what you're doing is sending emails apparently to Chris Santos, and he doesn't care, he doesn't work.
he's forwarding to me.
But.
And then Jen forwards them to me.
And we sent him the permission for the list. And Tim has gone back to try to change it in the system, but for some reason, whatever he's doing, it's still kicking it back to Chris Santos. So just last week I had one, when we have like reports if there's lights out on the monument signs and things like that. We get those incident reports and they're coming from Chris, because thankfully Chris is forwarding them to us.
Why not a hard copy? Just,
There should be a hard copy.
I print it and keep it in a folder, but.
it's just like the incident that happened over here. This is town center, I understand. But the guy with the hatchet.
It was, no, that's all speculation.
There
I'm
was
not
more,
gonna get into
there was an
that.
arrest made on that, though. I understand.
Yes, but it had nothing to do with a house.
And it wasn't on district property, so yeah.
We can't tie that to him.
No, oh, I'm saying, what are
Wasn't
these
listed.
reports? If
Well, we wouldn't see that because that was a non-district. Yeah, it was a non-district asset. The town center is not something the district owns, so we would not be notified of that.
The Pelican residents are concerned.
And that would be where the communication would, come from Jen. Yep.
Board meeting in that.
Well, it's great that it's been addressed, but if there's no resolution yet, that a separate agreement with Weiser to provide security services to non-district assets at Pelican Reserve, then it's not addressed. If there is something, then, otherwise it's still up in the air. Right?
Mark with Weiser, I and my guards still do rounds. I didn't know if there was a shout out or we were gonna get, say, we cannot go anywhere. But I made my rounds on Pelican Reserve Boulevard and there's certain people in this community that do appreciate me. And I stop by certain people's houses that have lost someone and I go to their houses because they want to see people, they want to see that someone's around. So I do that personally and I tell my guards. One of them's new and I still haven't changed anything for when we get the scans. So I'm making them do at least go to the RV lot, go to where we used to be, and then stay within the community. I have to get them to do that so they know the community instead of just going one way in one way. So as of right now, I go all the way down to Triet, I turn right around. Every direction I can go, if I do have the time, when I'm here, then I'm here before about 3:30 to about 3:30 in the afternoon.
This is Danny, just a question. You mentioned something about the scans. Have you eliminated the scans or they were not included in the new in your contract?
They were not included, no. We had an extra, there used to be 8 posts where you go
Correct.
around with the circle.
Correct, yeah.
No longer those, we do not do those any longer. but I'm telling my certain one guard, especially in overnight, just to do that without skating. So they're at least doing the rounds physically. So they're gonna be around the community where I don't want them just knowing how to their full bar control. So
Okay, so you're taking on additional duties outside the contract. So
as of
the
now,
expect-
my question was, I raised my hand about 10 minutes ago.
Yes.
Is it okay if I continue to do that, or is it a not kosher to be continuing to go to Sevilla and wherever else and circle around?
Well, I can address that. By doing that, you're giving the community an expectation
Correct.
that it's part of what you're supposed to do. Which causes the issue in communication, but why aren't they doing it any longer? We talk about the RV lot. Previous company did make visits to the RV lot. They do have card access in and out of that. But in the new contract, you don't have that, but you're still doing it. So the expectation that community patrol is gonna be at a specific location on an hourly basis or whatever, making periodic visits.
It's mostly just me and my 7 to 3 day shift is when I go around. My night shift guys don't really, unless there's parking reasons. That's about it. And just patrol, but they would only go down main boulevards. Like I'm saying, during the day, there's a certain people that expect to see me and want to see me. So I do have to go to separate areas within the community outside the main roads that only.
So are you suggesting that the community patrol, the roving patrol is not in the current contract scope of services?
Yeah, it's to maintain, if somebody gets in, it's to maintain and chase down and or just follow somebody in if there's any, if they can't get a hold of a resident or somebody like that, to follow them in and make sure somebody's there to. It's an next phone.
So that isn't
The rover is for that purpose,
for that purpose, but not to,
not to just
Not
drive
to
around
do-
to each individual community. Not anymore.
That's the conflicting situation. And that needs to be going forward. It needs to be revisited and rewritten.
I guess what I'm saying is I personally would like it, if the community would like it to continue. Having the access to go around to each individual at a time. I'm talking in Belgium, any, all areas, so
That would be part of the supplement. This is.
correct. This would have to be.
Yeah, this would not be part of the,
That's what I mean.
yeah.
You know, have a supplement per se, the town center and.
The community patrol.
By garage doors, RV and boat storage, those type of things. That would be part of the PPCA supplemental contract.
Correct.
Yeah, this is it. It's a little confusing because doesn't the board have all the streets within Pelican?
No.
Most of them,
Most,
not one down to the town center, but all most of the neighborhood ones.
Yeah, that's all under control of Gateway and streets.
No, it's-
but yeah, the majority of the streets belong to Gateway, yes.
that?
The majority of the streets belong to Gateway.
Right, so the patrolling of the gateway assets needs to be in the gateway.
But you're asking us to patrol people's garage doors, which are outside of, but also the contract that we have with Weiser is not to patrol the streets, it's to provide gate access control. That's it. That's our contract.
So we have to add.
It's not community patrol. I read it. It's gate access.
I understand when you throw in the looking at garage doors and private property, yeah, that's gotta be under the master board contracts. But driving in the streets, you know, I mean, to me, that's a really gray area. Might not be in the contract now, but which contract should it be in? Because patrolling of streets, the street part, not the private property, but the street part is gateway asset.
But then it gets gray where you're asking them to let people know if their garage doors are open. So they would be doing that while they're patrolling the streets. So
Security to the private property, which needs to be under the master agreement.
yeah, but it gets very gray because they're driving on a district street performing services for
Right.
PPCA. So
again, there's been a change. It predated you, Jeff, before PW. But there's been a change in, if not in the scope of the work, there's certainly been a change in the performance of what was being done in the past.
correct.
When, under the prior security company. And someone must have directed Gateway to change the scope. I'm
I'm not sure, yeah. No, I was here when you guys changed companies.
Change in the scope or Securitas was working beyond the scope of their contract. But there's certainly expectations that the community has developed over time. When there's a roving patrol driving up and down virtually every street in Pelican Preserve. What are they there for, if not to observe something? And if they observe something, if they observe a breaking and entering in a home, are they supposed to turn their back on that?
No, they're supposed to call the police.
Why?
They're not armed, they're not
Why
expected,
are
that's a
they-
security service and they're not expected to perform security, they should call the police, that's what they should do,
They should observe and
call the police,
call the police.
yes.
And what's the difference between observing and calling the police or observing and calling the owner of a house that has their car being broken into in the garage that's got the door open?
If they see someone breaking into a car, if they see someone breaking into a car, I would expect that they would call the police. It's outside. We run into liability issues where we overstep the bounds of patrolling things that are not district assets. I'm not cold. I'm got my district hat on, not my Laura hat. This is my district hat, not my personal feelings. I'm here as a representative of the district.
But it
So,
seems like there's
yeah.
some need for improvement in the process.
And I think the best solution is to have the supplementary contract with the PPCA to cover the expectations of the residents for what happens in the community versus what the district is paying for to patrol the gate access. So I think that's the best solution.
Randy, you had.
Yeah, two quick things. PPAC's involvement in the change from security companies was basically on the recommendation of Scott Charnock. He came to our meeting and suggested that they received these different bids and recommended that we approve Weiser's contract offer and send it on. And that was pretty much what it was about. They were very close in pricing. I didn't know that we had enough information to make a change because it was really just a few $100s over the year.
I thought there was
We
some
took
dissatisfaction with the previous.
on
one.
Scott's
Yeah.
part.
Yeah.
He didn't elaborate a lot.
Okay,
But anyways, that was primarily a recommendation from Scott. Now, how much of that was involved with community association, I don't know because we weren't informed.
Right, okay, thank you.
Now, the second thing, in regards to this, not calling after 10 o'clock, was it?
Yeah.
Or something? I asked Christopher Santos about that, and he said they did it because some people got upset when they got called and they're already asleep.
Yeah.
So I think that's stupid personally, but
Yeah.
I think I've made it clear how I feel about that in the past, but that was the rationale, that the reason I got it. So correct those kinds of things because they don't make sense
That's
in my mind.
That's right.
And I would, if it was me, I'd go up and press the button on the enter on the key and go back to my patrolling. Yeah, that's me.
But Randy, the point about, this is, dragging up the past, the history with Scott making a recommendation. I would have thought that when the district went out, or maybe it was Castle that went out to request proposals from different security companies, there was a scope of work that all of them were proposing on. And so that they were proposing on the same scope of work. And I would have thought you, that Weiser and Securitas and whomever else proposed had the same scope. And if the scope was different from what Securitas might have been doing in the past versus what Weiser proposed on, it's an apples and oranges issue.
no, I can say for sure that the same scope was sent out to everybody. When we put the contract out to bid, it was a scope and anyone who bid on it got the same parameters.
And that may have been different from what
Securitas is actually,
doing before.
yeah,
There's there's another item, that is not listed here, but it's part of the post orders, I think, and maybe it will be part of a supplement that needs to be considered, and that is the, control of the emergency access road, the gates. In an emergency situation, 2 weeks ago, we were fortunate that our front entry was not shut down, but it could have been when there was a fatal crash on tree line just below Pelican Preserve Boulevard. It could have shut down access to and from Pelican Preserve. And if that happens, what does Wiser, is my question, if anything? I mean, how do you let people in and out from the road
They can't.
that's closed?
They can't, they don't have access to that.
No, I
Um,
know that. I'm asking what, but they may not have any access to the gate in the back of the property, but they have control at the front of the property. And if the front of the property is shut down,
Yeah, so
how do you direct people to go someplace else?
to go someplace else,
How, yeah,
To exit the community, there is no
yes,
exit.
if they're trying to come in, I would stand on one end, look for scans and look for the barcode. Otherwise, we would have another person checking in, we write actually everything down physically. That's how we've done it when, like.
Right.
the store-
But if it was something on tree line where they couldn't
Right.
even get in or out,
You wouldn't even see the car.
yeah.
So what could they do? There's nothing we can do because nobody gets.
I would ask
Right.
the police as much as that, information we could get.
correct.
Get time frame to when we could possibly get out. Fortunately, it's a bad accident, but I don't really have a solid answer for you.
no, I understand.
Do our best.
I'm not giving you a hard time.
All
What if?
Emergency services has access to the back gate.
correct.
So emergency services, so the police would then have to, or fire department have to step in and open that gate.
And allow the traffic.
In and out. So,
Correct.
And they would have to work with Wiser on that.
Don Bickle, that's not workable. And I've been incident management for a lot of years, and I've had major events that I've had directed myself. You're not gonna get Fort Myers PD or the fire department out here to take care of a problem if you have a hurricane and it's all wiped out, and you've got people, you need to get in and out of here, and the back gate's locked. You're gonna play heck getting somebody to unlock that gate. The only way that gate's gonna come down, somebody run it down. That's how people are gonna get
The
out.
district has access to open the gates as well.
Who does?
The district.
Are you gonna be around in the middle of a hurricane?
We have people who are on call 24/7, yes.
I doubt that.
But we have-
We're gonna
we-
somebody
I-
available.
We do. There is an emergency. You call our office and you, after hours, you hit one, there is somebody who is on call 24/7. That will be here.
Person's busy on something else, the point is.
We have multiple
emergency
staff.
is an emergency. It's not
Yep.
something you can plan for. Somebody on site here.
Nope,
needs
that we
to have
cannot,
key.
we cannot do that. That was one of the conditions when we went before the county to have this road put in, that it is an emergency access only. There is no key, the keypads do not work, there is no code. The only people who are allowed to access that road are district employees and emergency personnel. That is it, per the county, per our agreement with them when we went before them to have that road put in. There is no access to be given to anyone at Pelican Preserve.
Question on that, right? So is the road a CDD asset?
Yes,
Okay. The community Wiser is a asset, not gonna, it's a response personnel.
Understood. They-
Given an emergency key.
nope, they're there to contact the district and we would
Okay,
come and
that was
unlock
my
it.
question.
Yep.
They can
Yep.
be in the they can.
The police they can contact the police, they can contact the on-call person, whoever, and we will unlock it or the police can in the short term till somebody can get there to maintain it, to staff it.
And as far as the tree line. I've come from law enforcement and I have a lot of incidents like this gentleman is, accidents, traffic can be diverted around. Very unlikely that we, Pelican Reserve, will be locked into this community. We got a wide entrance and an exit. Can it happen? Absolutely. People are very vigilant. They know how to get around these things. We can find our way outside the development, either north or south on tree line, depending where the incident is. Yes, it's gonna be inconvenience. There's gonna be a lot of.
That gets then directed by.
Correct, that's gonna be handled by law enforcement.
Yeah, that-
I don't think we're gonna have that type of incident. I'm also on the emergency response team here. There are ways to move people in and out of development, and if we have to, we can go out to the Pelican Reserve, not the storage yard, golf maintenance.
You're right.
I can get keys for those fences to have emergency access on the south side of tree line. That's not a problem. The road is a little narrow, but it can be handled. So there is another emergency egress from this community that we have control of as residents or as a board.
It's my understanding that that's only happened once in the history of Pelican where the neighborhood was, you guys were stuck in here that couldn't get in or out. So in the whole entire history of Pelican Reserve, it's only happened
There is,
once.
I'd say, 5% probability is that.
Yeah.
It's pretty rare, I'm sure.
No, it can happen though.
But it can happen.
Yeah.
And I'm concerned, how does the person who's living within the community get information that they can't go the way they normally go, they have to be rerouted to a different direction. There's no variableness in sounding on. There's no broadcasting, emailing. There's no reverse 911. There's none of this. There's none of this going on, to my knowledge, in Pelican Preserve. And if we're concerned with safety, I consider that to be safety and security, seems to me we need to have provision, and maybe we need to work on it. But it just seems to me that's a topic of concern, and it ought to be a topic of concern whether they are using CDD assets or they're at the town center and there's an explosion or something. There's got to be some provisions here.
That's something I think we need to team up with the communications committee.
Yeah.
Because they're putting in all kinds of interesting new ways to communicate within the community. And I think you're right, we do need to think about how to get that kind of emergency information out to the community, so I think it's something we should team up on.
I agree with that, but you have to have a plan to communicate it out.
Oh,
You have to develop the plan. And we need to know who has got the keys, maybe more than one person. Because if that one person is up north
Mhm.
on vacation, oh, he's here, he's got the keys, he's up. I've run into that hundreds of times. It just, it's not, we need to have somebody in 24/7 to get people out.
Well, that's what access control would be. They would have a laptop.
Go to the emergency response team.
But who has access control?
Oh, that's Carol Brown.
Wise.
Yeah.
Inside the golf.
Then I agree with that.
That's what we, in the meetings.
Didn't Stacy Logue send out some emergency messages in the past by text or?
I don't know.
It seems to me that she did. Or emails
So that would have been from.
from the town center management.
Yeah.
I thought.
Okay, well, there's some work to be done there, is the point, both on scope of the safety and security and wider security, as well as expanding it to include the additional assets. Yes.
So,
Jen.
yeah, this is Jennifer Nisanoff. Jen and I were just talking very briefly offline, and she had a better idea than I had, and that was to get the PPERT involved.
Yeah.
And we've got a meeting tomorrow, so we're gonna bring it up with them and just let them know that it's something we might like to team up with
Sure.
them on.
The district has a lot of issues getting in just general information out to the residents of Pelican Preserve. And it's not from lack of effort on our part. We send it over here, but often it gets blocked and it never gets received and then never dispersed. So we have some frustrations on our end too, just even like the work that's being done and progress updates, like the paving over in Avila. I gotta go check on that after I leave here. Just to let people know kind of like, here's what's going on. And we can't get it out to the residents. And it's not like we're not sending it over. It just hits a wall. I would have to check with Georgia. We were given a couple of different email addresses to try to get around our roadblock, and it still doesn't appear to be working, or the HOA presidents aren't dispersing it. So they're getting it and they just don't send it out like they're supposed to. So.
Okay. Good. Neighborhood review of sign.
Did you set a date? I'm sorry you have to set a date for the post orders workshop. Yep.
Not I'd like to set a date for the review of the workshop date, but I don't want it to be a date of a regular meeting, which is scheduled for the last Monday of the month. So if there is a date that makes sense that people are available for,
We need it can't be any earlier than a week from today because we have to publish it. And we'll have to have an agenda, so.
I'd like to look at the 17th.
Yeah, and then 17.
The 17th work for people.
not the 17th for me,
I am off that day.
18, that's a holiday, 18.
No. I haven't had a day off in a while, so, yeah.
21, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Wednesday's good. Thursday's okay, and Friday's okay.
I know Wednesday morning, the 19th.
Wednesday the 19th is good for me.
Wednesday, the 19th is good for you?
Yes.
Okay.
Wednesday, 19th.
I have a 10 o'clock meeting, but I might be able to move it.
Or maybe we-
Wednesdays are generally not good for me, but I can kind of shuffle my schedule.
Thursday's good.
Thursday, we have a board meeting, so that will not be a good day for me. I can send someone else, but I don't know who else is. Maybe I could send Randy if you guys are gonna talk post orders.
I will not be present, I will not be on site, so, in order for us to have a quorum, we still have to have 3 people present.
Do you have how many on your committee?
We have,
Okay, then 3, yep.
and, Ted makes 5, right?
Yes.
Then you need 3, yep, in person.
I'm okay in the afternoon.
I have a 1 o'clock. Wednesdays, I said generally Wednesdays are not good for me. I can flex my morning meeting if that works better for you guys. I cannot, the 1 o'clock is a capital reserve meeting, so I have to be at that one.
Wednesday morning, the 19th.
What time?
Any, you okay with that?
Yes, sir.
10 a.m.
Okay.
Now, procedurally, are we gonna each bring our own updates, or are we gonna try to merge them, or what? Because there's some merging going on and some non-merging going on, so I just wanna make sure I understand. Because I have updates, but all I have are your updates.
And that's the last copy that I've seen is the one that I was here for most of the meeting and made some
Yeah,
edits
and
to the
I
copy while
thought-
I was online.
And I put mine on top of yours,
Okay.
and I know Dean sent some out.
And I think mine would come on top of hers also.
Okay, so maybe what I need to do is put mine on top of yours.
Somehow merge the 2 together.
Yeah.
We'll have to, yeah, I think electronic will be better. If you have it, if you could just send your copies to Georgia with who they're from. Well, I mean, she'll know they're from you and she'll have to compare and contrast. Did you use the track changes by any? Okay,
Yeah.
then that should be perfect because she can just look and see what changed. And she can look between both of your versions. Yeah, and put them together for that
And
meeting.
then circulate it back to Danny and Ted and myself, get it circulated back.
Yeah, so get everything to her, I would say by the 10th, which gives her a couple of days to get it put together to have published on the 12th, which is the week before the meeting. So please have any, and she'll send you one to work on, so you'll have a copy. I asked her to, just get everything back to her by, I would say noon on the 10th, which is that Monday. But that gives her a day and a half to get everything put together and get it
Okay.
published.
That'd be great, thank you.
Yep, and please, please, please use the track changes if you make any.
Yeah, I've been doing that.
I think I have the document set up that way, so it should by default.
Yeah. but-
Worst case is I think we may be able to have it at the district if we had to have it someplace and you couldn't find anything here. I can't check the board calendar right now.
All right, so we'll move on to neighborhood review of sidewalk safety repairs. Now, this is something that is a maintenance issue, I believe. There was a review done by a consultant in late 22, sidewalk conditions throughout Pelican Preserve, sidewalks being CBD assets. And a number of areas where sidewalks were identified as cracked and broken, or the, elevation, the panels have shifted so that there's a lip, there's at least 1/4 of an inch difference from one to the other, causing a concern for trip and fall. And, we had received that, document from, CDD, several weeks back, maybe 5, 6, 7 weeks ago. I think that what we need to do is, as a committee, is kind of be assigned or volunteer to work with the HOA presidents, and there's a lot of them, to review conditions in the field and agree on where things need to be repaired, replaced, ground down to make the transition smooth, et cetera. In the meantime, Jen, you got pricing to repair all.
I do, and I actually went ahead because this was during the time when Keith was leaving and Chelsea, I was working with Chelsea. So because of the trip hazard, this is considered an emergency repair that we need to get this done. So we have hired Gator Construction to grind 87 sections down for a price of $3,915, which is very reasonable price.
Yeah.
That work has been signed off as an emergency. We did, the day after I sent this off, we did have someone that tripped on Pelican Preserve Boulevard and did scrape her knee, so this has been, I'll get you a copy of this as well.
But we'll have a list of all the. Okay, yeah.
And has all the locations that he's.
Okay.
I've worked with Gator Construction for many of my other properties and he's a good guy. He's good.
Okay,
So,
Do we just let them decide what needs to be done, or do we have anybody? We don't have a civil engineer anymore, but do we have anybody at district that can review that?
So we sent him the 60-page engineering report that Dean was talking about. So Gator was sent that whole engineering report. He came out and did the inspections on all of it. And he's grinding down anything, I believe that's higher than 1/4 inch.
Who was that?
Gator Construction of Southwest Florida.
will anybody observe the work that they're doing? To
I don't
verify
know
that
if
it's
Keith
been
ever,
done?
did Keith ever come out and supervise the work while they were doing it, or?
I think he came after the fact, not like while.
Right,
Yeah.
we probably should have someone.
It needs to be inspected one way or the other, so.
Depending on what the criteria was behind that, I got a feeling that we may have a difference of opinion on some of those. I think either some are going to be raised or some need to be replaced because tree roots are putting them up. I think that grinding is appropriate in some cases, but it's kind of a short-term fix.
Sure.
I don't think it's,
Can I chime in?
if you're talking a half inch or something, maybe that's appropriate, but
Chelsea has a comment whenever you're. Go ahead.
So can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so when we previously had Mark from AECom, who was CEI, construction engineering inspection, come out, and he literally walked every single mile of GSCDD sidewalks and made a list per DOT specs of any potential trip hazards. And that list, is my understanding, is what was provided to Gator Construction to address. So either somebody from staff or hopefully from KW will go and follow up. Normally you do a final walkthrough of the project once it's done. So it may be myself, it may be Laura, or we may have somebody from AECom come back out just to confirm.
Don Bickle, on the list, did they put replace or grind? Did they specify what they needed to do at that location?
So on
Just all it says grinds.
So it's 87 grinds, but they do specify if sections of concrete are above 1/2 inch or are cracks, damaged, removal of the concrete section and replacement will need to take place. Property manager will be notified of changes. If roofs need to be ground, an additional charge will be added. So right now, this is just the initial, let's get the trip hazards out of the way. And then as they're out there, then there would probably be a change order if we need to remove sections of sidewalk.
That makes sense to me, and somebody can go back, inspect each one of those areas and say, yeah, we need to do more, but we've got it taken care of.
We've got to get
That makes
this,
sense.
yeah. Well, this is a liability with the trip hazards.
So every one of those is identified, he's almost of 87, probably 84 of them are identified as quarter inch. And the few others are identified as half inch.
Yep.
And they're all identified as grinding.
Yep.
None of them are replacement at this point.
That's correct.
Jen, can you share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Jen, is this on the O and M agreement, or is this something that to be brought to PPAC next meeting for approval?
Out of the O&M agreement budget. So this would come out of part of the, was the safety and security, the 69,800 that you have in your budget. No, sorry, it'd be sidewalk road repairs. Yeah, it would be this 40,000 in the line item budget for sidewalk road repairs. So it would be part of that.
And there was a lot of communication back and forth between Jen and Keith, and I was copied in before we did go forward with this, so we okayed it because it is an emergency repair.
So beyond this, they will likely continue to have a need, but I don't think at this point, if we address stage 87, I don't know that there's a need to come around and meet with the presidents initially, and maybe after the fact, after things are done, to see if there's anything else. But as far as identifying who's willing to volunteer for what communities, I think we can put that on hold for that.
Sure. There was an issue that I think it was Associa was pushing back for, because apparently someone tripped in Sevilla, but it was the sidewalks literally in front of their front door. So that would be on the association at that point. So Jalecia with Associa kept pushing back, thinking that it was Gateway was gonna take care of it. No, that is not our responsibility, that is yours. And I forwarded her Gator construction, so if she needs to make repairs while he's out here as well. And, so I think there is some misconception of the sidewalks. They think that, Sienna and all of them, that we're gonna take care of all of it. It's on their association up to their buildings. We're only doing the sidewalks that are adjacent to the street.
The other ones, I don't really consider sidewalk.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Don't.
So, Don Bickle, so then in the future, once it gets resolved, it'll be up to, the monkey will be on the HOA president's back to make notification to whom of any additional or new type of issues.
I would say that should go to KW, and then because there are boots on the ground for the district here inside of Pelican Preserve. And then depending on the issue, then Jen would communicate with the district and we would depending on
Yeah,
what
that-
needed to
that
be
makes
done.
sense
So,
to me.
yep.
Okay, good, thanks. The next item, golf cart safety. Favorite one, huh?
Oh, there's a lot going on there. I think we all saw, a copy of an email that came out. It was basically a copy of what the Residents Alliance sent out in 2018, and they got updated in 2019. Basically talking a little bit about the history. In terms of where golf carts can actually travel on the roadways, I'll say, of Pelican. It really was focused on Pelican Preserve Boulevard and Pelican Square Drive. And, I don't know, you might not have seen this yet.
Right.
So I'll have to get you a copy of it. But basically that came back out, to, a lot of people saying, hey, let's talk about this again. Because there's still confusion out there in terms of what we're supposed to be doing. There was, a discussion at PPAC, beginning of March, to talk about this. And, basically, what they've done is they've asked if we in our sub-team could take a look at it and decide, what is our recommendation back to them on how it should be resolved. There are a number of things that have changed in the environment since this resolution was passed. First of all, we've opened up within Pelican the type of golf carts that people can use. And, so golf carts now are going faster than they would have been able to before. And also they have wider tires, which makes them a wider footprint. So where golf carts would have a problem in that 4-foot space on the side, these newer ones would have an even bigger problem, staying within that, area. So there was a lot of discussion about that, and they asked if we could please take a look at this and come back with a recommendation to them by their May meeting. Subsequent to that, a few emails went around. And there were some emails to people who participated in PPAC in the past. But when we asked them, could they give us any insights? Basically, it was actually just one person, if I recall. They basically said, yeah, I was there, but we really had, I didn't have anything to do with that particular resolution. I think the most, right, well, it's been a few years and people change and there's been turnover and what have you. I think the most interesting thing that came out in email was really from Carl. I don't know how to pronounce, but he's a traffic engineer from Fort Myers, and I know we get a lot of input from him. And I think what was interesting about that is, he provided a lot of interesting information about laws. And, I actually tried to drop a little summary here of the laws because there are a couple laws that kind of contradict each other, and then there are a lot of laws that are very distinct. So for instance, within Florida, there is a state statute that defines low-speed vehicles. And there's a statute that defines golf carts. And that's important because low-speed vehicles have different laws associated with them than something that goes over a certain amount of miles per hour, and that's where the contradiction comes in between these two state statutes. There are no Fort Myers laws that he could find on the books. There are federal laws, and they pretty much say that anything below 20 miles per hour is subject to a state and local government. But there are laws regarding safety equipment needed if a motor vehicle goes over 20 miles per hour. So we're in Florida, some statutes say 20, some say 25. But when you start looking at, say, the federal laws, that's where the 20 miles per hour becomes really important. So I think what we need to do is take this kind of information and take a look at the statute, not the statute, excuse me, the resolution that came out in 2018 and decide, are there any changes that we would like to make? Given the fact that the environment has changed since 2018.
And this is Dean, and the resolution, I thought the CDD took a position that said bicycles shall use the, I'll call it undesignated shoulder lane, 4-foot shoulder lane for bicycles. Golf carts may or should use the 4-foot lane. But but that was not mandatory, so bicycles shall mandatory, golf carts should optional use the 4-foot shoulder.
Until such time that new rules are approved and promulgated.
Question. We've been talking about this quite a bit internally. I guess because the district doesn't control golf carts in any other community, and having golf carts really isn't any benefit to the district. Is this something that would be more of an HOA responsibility? And Jennifer, I think you did a great job laying out that these are the laws at the state level. These are the laws. I mean, Lee County does have some restrictions as far as the shared pathways, who can golf carts where and
Right.
not on their roads, which gets violated all the time, but not inside Pelican, but on Gateway
Right.
Boulevard in Griffin. So I think it's kind of, it's from a district standpoint, that we don't want to be involved in the minutia of having the golf carts. We would prefer to just fall back to what you were discussing there and say Pelican Preserve is a retirement community. They are a golf cart community. Golf carts can be on the roads subject to the state, federal, local laws. And that's the extent of our involvement. What you guys, if you want to enforce the licensing, the checking, that, because we can't require people who drive vehicles to have insurance on their golf carts. So we can't require people who have golf carts to have insurance. I mean, there really isn't much that the district can do from an enforcement standpoint. So that would be, I mean, that's kind of where we've been talking about internally, is just to step back, basically undo that resolution that we did and step back, saying the district's position is, we recognize it's a golf cart community. We recognize you're going to drive your golf carts on the roads, which is fine with us. The policing is the responsibility of the HOA.
And is the board of supervisors part of Gateway or is that above
The Board of Supervisors is Gateway.
that in Gateway?
Yes.
Because I know that they have the ultimate decision.
Yep, and that's gonna be based on conversations with staff and with council. We're kind of getting that way with the Board of Supervisors, and that's gonna be staff's recommendation. And our lawyer's recommendation is that we back out of the minutia of the golf cart stuff. Recognize the fact that you guys are using the golf carts in here, which we're totally cool with. And if you guys choose to restrict or impose any additional things above and beyond what the laws are, that would be on, the onus would be on the HOA.
Specifically, what Residents Alliance sent out, this was from 2018, updated in 2019. It said the all-purpose lane is for bicycles and golf carts per this GSCDD ruling. PPAC issued an opinion that golf carts should use the all-purpose lane. It should. Once again, we can't enforce it, so it's just a suggestion. Carts using the right-hand lane would be difficult to enforce. So a couple of things have changed in that time. What we've seen is a build out of Pelican Preserve. So we have more traffic probably using that particular lane. The second thing we're seeing more of are what the city, well, the transportation engineer for the city refers to as low-speed vehicles, LSVs. So that is golf carts that can go 30 miles an hour because they're updated for it, and electric bikes that can do 28 miles an hour. And so those things have to be taken into consideration in terms of how comfortable are those folks with a cart that's 15 miles an hour now sharing with those other, other speed areas. So there's a couple of the transportation engineer for the city of Fort Myers, who we would have to satisfy to get a permit. First choice is this, that it be a bike lane. But historical use now over the last 20 years indicates that it's been a golf cart community, and they probably had more golf carts than bicycles in the past. So the second recommendation was make it bicycle lane and golf cart lane with the icon for each of those with a limit of 20 miles an hour. This was the secondary line. Once again, can't enforce it necessarily, but to try to push that higher speed, vehicles into the right-hand lane and let the cars and big vehicles on the left-hand lane. Yeah.
Originally, that 4-foot lane, which is maybe 4 foot, was designated as a bicycle lane with icons on the street showing a bicycle.
Yeah, and it was decided that PPAC overstepped their bounds and GSCDD came and took those off.
Correct, they blacked them out. When you're starting merging vehicles together, we're now, in the last 2 years, I've noticed a lot more people running and walking in that 4-foot area. They should be on sidewalks. That curb lane should be for bicycles.
Thank you.
The street should be for motorized motor vehicles, which would include golf carts, electric bikes, and those type of vehicles. That way, if a person is going to operate a golf cart, they have to be a certain age and need to know the rules of the road. They should be experienced somehow in driving. So they should be able to continue on the streets that we have designated as regular roadways for cars. The speed limits in here are pretty low. You know, we got 30 mile an hour, you know, 25 and 20, you know, we got different speeds, but they're all pretty low. I think they could safely operate in the regular traffic lanes. And I'm talking about golf carts and motorized bicycles. Then you got issues with the skateboards and all that kind of stuff. They got those in here too now. So motorized. But I think we need to differentiate, you put that back as a bicycle lane.
I agree. I agree.
Thanks, Bruce.
Yeah, Mark with Pfizer, I just want to say, Mr. Bickle, I get a lot of complaints, especially from the bike club. Particularly, but others as well, but when they have to go around, it's very, very dangerous. We need our walkers and our runners to be on the sidewalk. I notice it every day. They have to go around when people are walking and a bike comes through them, they're going right in that right-hand lane, so. Whatever way we can pass that along would be great.
That all happened in COVID. That's when all these changes started taking place, because you had to keep 6 foot, 8 foot, 12 foot, 18 feet away from somebody else, which is totally ridiculous. And so people started differentiating. I can see sometimes somebody's walking a dog. You know, you may want to walk out around them because of, you know, dog friendly or not, but that's just a happenstance.
But then they should get right back on.
They should get right back onto the sidewalk.
Saying during COVID, people should.
They should.
Back then, right back on, but I agree with you, it started.
It's,
Jen, Lois, real quick, I just put the elephant in the room. So if it goes back to PPCA for control, let's just say PPCA is like, we don't want to do the inspections. It's too much on the office to do the stickers, because it's nonstop. I mean, that is the biggest thing in the office, where the foot traffic coming into registered golf carts. A golf cart hits a street light within the community. And that's an asset of Gateway. The roads are also your asset. So how does that work out if we can't identify the person that damaged something within the community? So I'm just saying, I think we're.
Yeah, from our standpoint, that's not any different than a vehicle.
right.
So it would be just like if you had someone, a hit and run with somebody with their car, same situation. It's somebody driving a vehicle on one of our roads that hits one of our assets, whether it's a golf cart or a car, it happened.
And
So,
they're supposed to have that, that's for insurance purposes. They know they have to have insurance. If you drive a motor vehicle on a public thoroughfare, if you don't have insurance, then you get sued. You know, if, and you get involved in a crash. Now, I can see it for town center parking purposes, have a town center parking sticker for golf carts. I can see that because it's private, kind of private property. It's no longer a public street, but we don't need stickers for these golf carts on public streets.
I guess the district does not do anything as far as an enforcing of whatever they're. Yeah.
Tires, sure that the cart looks well maintained. And then they're showing us proof of their insurance. I've even been running out there during the day on Mondays and putting a notice on the golf carts for anyone who doesn't have a current sticker. So from an administrative side, it's a lot of work.
Right.
To maintain the golf cart
and
stickers and proof of insurance and all of that.
Why do we even need, I'm here quite a few years, why do we even have to register the golf carts?
Well, we were told that it was a requirement Gateway, that we had to inspect them and that we had to put.
And more like we-
Insurance.
No, I don't think so.
No, I don't know.
That's why we're looking at, I don't know which resolution that was in or whatever. That's where, from the district standpoint, we went out of the golf cart business.
Because if
So-
if a golf cart hits something, that person's gonna be on site. You know, and if they don't, it's no different than any other hit and run, you know, whether it has a sticker or not.
Yeah.
The only thing I feel that sticker does is for inside the town center area, somebody parks illegally, you know who's called, somebody
Yeah.
can't find their golf cart. To me, it serves no purpose. It's a waste of money and time.
The time is enormous.
And we understand that, yeah, so we know from a district standpoint that it's a burden on the staff to enforce it.
Yeah.
And again, that's why we're just like, we're recommending that we pull out of the golf cart business. Especially since Pelican is so much, like Randy stated, it's so much larger since when this
Right.
resolution came out. I mean, it's really not practical anymore.
1,000 stickers that Castle ordered for the year. Before we got here, we ran through all of those and had to order more. Because there's so many more golf carts and you know.
I mean, this is Ed, I think. As a resident here, to me, some of it is making sure that within our golf cart community, that it's proper, has proper turn signals and brake lights and things like that beyond the roads.
And
Otherwise, you could get just a golf cart that has none of those things driving on the road. So I think there's some control there with it.
my wife met a fellow who was a renter in the town center who brought his golf cart down from New Hampshire, someplace like that. And didn't know that they needed to check in with KW, didn't have a sticker, didn't have anything. And I think that that's a risk. I think it's a risk for everybody else that is assuming that the other guy has insurance on their golf cart. And so that's a reason that, well, the cars, I mean, there's laws about that.
Yeah.
And they have license plates and insurance companies need to weigh in on that, but for the golf carts, to me, it's evidence of insurance, and if you don't have a current sticker, in my opinion, you don't have insurance,
Exactly.
and that's an issue.
But here's my,
And I
Mr.
don't
Pat,
care about
yeah,
the-
yeah, we don't check vehicles, so we can't check golf carts. So I mean, if you want to put that on the HOA,
I'm not suggesting it's a CBD issue.
yeah,
I'm suggesting it's an issue for Pelican Reserve,
sure.
and I think the community association, the sticker said PDCA on it, by the way. Says you need to be responsible that everybody has a current year sticker, and if they don't, get them off the road.
That's the problem with it. You have stickers, but no one ever enforces them.
Oh, I have been. The
But,
last
yeah,
couple weeks,
what
I've
do you-
been putting a note in.
You put
every
notes,
golf
people
cart.
throw notes in the trash can.
Yeah, I know.
When
This
we had
is-
issues
Enforce it.
with, you can tow a vehicle off the property here
And
and
you
have
have
a
to
contract with site
We have
service.
code enforcement, they can tag them for whatever number is in the document.
As long as,
$20,
But
$50.
that's what we have to.
as long as you have policies and procedures that all residents are aware of. And then it's just like your HOAs you get fined for having X number of flower pots sitting outside.
We can have that.
You can add the golf carts to something like that,
Yes.
and you can fine an individual. If they don't have a sticker on their golf cart and they're supposed to have it, you have it removed. You
Well,
tow it.
We did have this is Jen again, we did have the coffee talk, which was very well attended at the theater. A lot of residents really enjoyed it. So once a month, we'll continue to have the coffee talks to get the feedback from the community on what they would like to see. One of the questions came up was golf cart. You know, what is the rules for the golf carts? And right now, I mean, we don't necessarily have anything other than the registration, so that is something we have to look at.
Registration includes evidence of insurance.
Sure,
And ages where people can operate a golf cart under state statute.
right, but I think what Phil Beasley was saying is the enforcement side of it, there is no enforcement side of it right now, and I think that's something we need to add in.
So,
And yeah, from the district standpoint, we can't enforce those things. That would be something that would have to be done at the HOA level.
So how about if we take, this is Jennifer Nisbel again, how about if we, take an action item where we come up with a proposal?
Yeah.
And I'd be happy to work with you on it. How we could go about getting some enforcement. I understand we might have to amend bylaws or something like that, which is a use restriction on it, that kind of thing, yeah.
So it sounds like your recommendation then would be to because PPAC is looking for a recommendation from this committee, which would then ultimately go to the Board of Supervisors and they have the final say. So it sounds like you're kind of leaning towards what staff had said too, to have us back out and just go by whatever the federal, state, local laws are. That's the extent of the district's involvement. And then the HOA, you're recommending that the HOA would take over the enforcement going forward. So that would be what, as of right now, that's what yeah, that's what my take is on this. That would be your recommendation to PPAC.
So keep in mind,
We realize it's a burden, so yeah.
whatever change would have to be approved by the city of Fort Myers, and it would have to be approved by Gateway. So.
City,
No,
The
no,
city,
In terms of
it
this.
doesn't have to do with private property.
only on the streets, which is only the boulevards.
Only town
Police
center.
police have no enforcement on any of the communities at all.
I'm talking about streets, I'm not talking about town center. That's private property, community property. I'm talking about the main streets and the neighborhood streets.
Will not enforce
Now,
golf cart laws.
This transportation engineer, these are the kinds of things he said that he'd had in his own community for enforcement. They put some kind of a identifying sticker on golf carts. And then they had the radar signs, what we do with the speed limits, but they would capture those. If people made a traffic violation, they get fined. I've also talked to people who lived in communities where if a fine was assessed and wasn't paid, they'd put a lien on your house. Now, do you want to live in a community like that? Do you think there's any chance that this community would accept that kind of draconian response? So we can complain about enforcement, but some folk, the biggest majority of folks follow the rules. It's a few that don't. And one day I'm walking and a lady comes up riding the bike in what we call the bike or the universal lane the wrong way, right? So when she sees another bike coming toward her, she drives up on the sidewalk. She broke the rule twice. What do you do about that? I don't know.
It's almost-
Okay, so-
almost not do anything.
yeah, like at this point, like I said, the district, we cannot enforce any of those things. So when you state that like the police can't enforce them, so from our standpoint, if there's enforcement to be done, it has to be done at the HOA level. And I know you don't have the staff to do it, so that's a separate issue, so that'll have to be taken into consideration when you make your recommendation. So that's gonna be, I mean, you could probably have someone full-time just doing golf cart stuff, I'm sure. The way that and we acknowledge it, but there's nothing from a district standpoint that we could do. So we would like out of the golf cart business. We acknowledge it's a golf cart community. We're happy to say, yes, you can drive your golf carts in here. You have to follow the rules, the federal, state, local rules. Any additional enforcement is the responsibility of the community, and then that's.
So, but you think in the conversation, and Don had a comment, and my impression is that I think we're all in agreement that 4-foot lane should be for bicycles. And we ought to make a recommendation that it get designated for bicycles, whether or not CDD likes that or not. I think we ought to make that recommendation. We ought to make a recommendation that the golf carts are a motor vehicle. And that they ought to be operating in the travel lanes. Probably in the right-hand lane, slower lane than in the passive lane, but not in the bicycle lane. And, you know, whether they go 20 miles an hour or 30 miles an hour, it is not the issue. If somebody is in a faster golf cart and wants to pass a slower golf cart, so be it. But the golf cart operator needs to be licensed, needs to have insurance on their vehicle, and needs to be aware of the rules of the road. And that's about the extent of the recommendation.
And I think that's addressed by stepping back one step and not having to update it all the time by saying it goes by the state, federal, local laws, because the markings, who should operate, what they have to have based on the vehicle, that's all included in there. We don't have to worry about updating it, because as the rules are updated, the policy is still good, because you're still abiding by the rules. So I think we're all on the same page. And I agree that you guys have some issues with like where people can, but that's an education thing more than a district issue, so.
But it
And-
started with you know, years ago, it started with direction from the CBD to eliminate the stencils of the bicycles on the lane. That now we submit ought to be a bicycle lane.
Sure.
I understand the rationale years ago, why.
There's a lot of things I don't understand that they
I mean,
did, so. yeah.
Decisions were made, and I think it was legal, but I think it's a wrong decision.
Sure.
Take a step back, put the stencils back on the, call it a bicycle lane. Bicycles then know that's where they're supposed to be.
Right, and the golf carts would know based on what the laws are. So, and then we would just make sure that all of the markings and the signs are all up to the MUTCD codes and,
GCD.
yep.
So then is this a recommendation that this subcommittee should make to PPAC?
Yes,
Yeah,
I believe so.
Okay. And then we make it for the next meeting?
Yeah, their next meeting is April 13th. 13th.
So the recommendation you're suggesting that it be for bikes only.
Excellent. And that doesn't mean that somebody's not gonna jog in it, that doesn't mean that people aren't gonna walk their dog in it either, but it's not for motor vehicles.
So the recommendation would be to make the lanes for bikes only. And then the resolution would be changed that the roads, the golf carts would have to use the roads in accordance with local, state, federal, whatever laws for their operation. Yeah, okay.
I'd also recommend that we end up putting out again, if this is approved, we put out something to everybody, the rules, the laws pertaining to golf carts.
I think there's a lot of education that will need to happen.
Put that out
Yep.
again, and it just shouldn't be put out on an email blast or something like that. It needs to be put into your newsletter,
At least-
Control magazine.
Section 4, it was discussed. when you were-
It hasn't had any real relevance in the newsletter.
So, but I'm wondering if PPAC has a section in there. I thought that was discussed and it was agreed upon that there would be, that any of the committees would be allowed to post something in there.
Well, again,
And since it's a big item, I put the front page. Because everybody looks at the front, but they may not read the whole thing. And just, I mean, if you make that change.
Even a big
it's a
headline
big change.
and then go
Yeah.
to go here, so.
Right.
All right,
It's like a newspaper.
so to make it official, I'm gonna recap again what I believe we've come to a conclusion that we're going to do, and then you guys will actually have to vote on it for the recommendation. And either you can take it to PPAC or I can put it together for the next PPAC meeting. We can figure that out. So the consensus of the committee, again, is to have those lanes be bikes only. And then to recommend that the Board of Supervisors create a new resolution, basically rescinding all previous resolutions that golf carts are allowed to operate on the roads inside of Pelican Preserve according to state, local, whatever the laws happen to be. And that will be the extent of the district's involvement, and that any additional enforcement would be at the responsibility of the community association.
Did you think that this, that the bike lane should be stenciled as such?
Stencil, you said?
Stenciled,
Yes.
that's how it should
Yep.
be.
That's, I had to make the lanes bikes only, yep. And then we'll make sure that we abide by all MUTCD signage. So
Yeah,
if that's acceptable, I'll make it sound fancier, but that's just like a general recap of.
The second part of that, I think town center needs to address the issue with. golf
That
carts.
HOA, it's HOA, yeah.
You guys can't recommend that.
No, we can't touch that.
I think that should be done.
Yeah. That's more work for Jen on a separate topic.
This is Jennifer Nisroff. Would you be willing to send that out to everybody? Because I think it's really important that before it goes to PPAC, that we have an opportunity to really see it in writing.
Sure.
And think about it for a day or two. I think we'll all still be in agreement.
Yep.
But because.
The wording, yeah, I can send it out, yeah, that's fine. So I will send it out, but if somebody could make a motion in a second and you guys vote on that, I will take the note to, or either Georgia or I will put it together, probably me. Put it together and we'll send it out.
I'll make the motion, we accept it as written.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
And can someone,
Does anybody know how we can segue from a golf cart community to this? Or it's still all the existing rules and regulation for golf carts would be in place? All the equipment that's required for a street legal would be in place? So we're only talking about this one lane on the major roads.
Yeah.
And in the neighborhoods,
Yeah.
they drive as they normally do.
You gotta be careful not to mention street legal. Street legal golf cart is totally separate from.
They're the LSVs, the low speed
Yes.
vehicles.
Street legal is they can go on city roads, county roads. Even though we have CDD roads here, unless it has a license plate, it cannot be operated on a city road.
Okay.
So street legal means over 25 miles an hour. That's registered as a street legal golf cart. Keeping in mind that many of the golf carts here, especially the newer ones, exceed that, but in order to save money, they have registered it as a street legal golf cart. So there's a fine line there,
Okay,
that, and it's very costly for a golf cart owner to change, convert it, well, register it as a street legal golf cart. Very costly, in his.
there were certain things that, like turn light signals, I thought were on our requirements.
It is a, it is
They're
a
not-
Florida,
They're not for any of them, that are on the golf club.
correct. Well, that's.
And when they cross our roads, they're not
Golf,
exactly.
golf carts are exempt because they're on the golf course and they must use their hand signals though. That's the other requirement. It's either mechanical turn signals or hand signals. That's a requirement by the state.
And the other thing is obviously lights at night. That's another requirement, but,
That's all in the law. If I
That's
remember
in the
reading
law.
all that,
That's-
it's all laid out in there. So, yeah. And that's with any additional enforcement would have to be on the HOA. So,
but we had originally, you had like only easy go type golf cart.
yeah, we don't care.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, the district doesn't care what kind of golf carts people had. That was like a P-PAC.
Yeah.
That was a Pelican decision that got pushed in through the resolution, but the district doesn't really care what color golf carts you guys drive or the seats or whatever.
And Jen, some of what happened there was, the color of golf carts. It was easy go golf carts with that kind of beige or tan color. The golf cart manufacturers stopped making it available.
Yes.
I know one of the people on the PPAC committee wanted to buy one because he's a golf club member, wanted to get a trail one. And he couldn't get that. So he bought a club car, and I suspect the golf course lost money potentially on that rule. The manufacturers also started coming up with all kinds of different colors.
Yeah.
So they're way ahead of us.
That would fall under the additional enforcement as the responsibility of the HOA. So yeah, if you guys
So we
want to
have-
control the colors, so.
And we had some people who are really hard to convince that we should have multiple colors of golf carts, but
Well, saw some space age looking golf cart that was parked in the parking lot at the Brockton Center that I think it's an electric, well, they're all electric, but I don't know.
The yellow one?
It's a white one and it looks like a little space car. I don't think that applies.
And that's something I think in the original documents, it had to be, it had to be a golf cart that met the certain requirements and could not be the body change to be a villages with the Mercedes-Benz front ends and all that. And you can see it happening now. There are some golf carts that have that tight little twinks to it, like going with a Mercedes-Benz sticker.
Well,
I think the one you're talking about has 2 front seats and 2 back seats
I think so.
under
that's
one
a
row.
plated vehicle.
That's a street legal golf cart.
Oh.
That is street legal. That's the difference. He or she
Okay.
should have license plates on that.
It does.
Okay.
So what we'd had enforced in the past was you don't customize it.
That's the
So
one.
you don't, like the old dune buggies,
Yeah,
that would be
yeah.
made to look.
Folks, I have a hard stop at noon time.
Okay.
So if we could keep, we will not get through it.
Sorry, because I want to make sure I don't violate sunshine laws, I will happily send it to you ahead of time, but we can't have any back and forth. So this won't be able to go to PPAC until May because you'll have to discuss it at your April meeting. So we can have discussion on it, because if you guys, I know, if I send it out and then you communicate back to me, that's
We'll
communication outside.
Communicate back to Randy, and Randy can get it all back to you. So we'll get it done. We'll get
So
it.
it would be May, so we'll have it, and then it'll get to the board at their second meeting in May then, so we'll have it done. So we're seeing 6 weeks, 7 weeks, so not too bad.
And they asked for it in May anyway.
Yeah, so it'd be perfect. We'll get it to them when they wanted it.
Review pavement markings refresh proposals. Keith, at our last meeting in early February, we were talking about the need to get pavement markings updated. A lot of them have faded. And Jen got pricing from 3 companies.
The third one, he needs to come back because of the thermoplastic.
Okay, well, the pricing ranged for, this is for replacing, redoing, refreshing all of the pavement markings through Pelican Reserve, not in the neighborhoods, but at the intersections where their streets intersect with Pelican Preserve Boulevard or with Cypress Grove Drive or with Prado Boulevard. Oh, not that area either, sorry, because that was recently done. Prado Boulevard going out there, so it doesn't include that at this point. And the numbers are roughly $40,000 to do all of the paint, replace it, refresh with paint with reflectorized, no, not reflectoring beads in the paint. Glass, that's the word. Thank you. About $40,000. And if we wanted to go thermoplastic, which is longer lasting, about $80,000. You haven't got the number exactly yet, right? But it's twice as much at least.
And the recommendation from pretty much all 3 of them kind of pushed off the idea of thermoplastic. Because they said they could probably paint it 3 times within the refresh the paint 3 times versus the cost of thermoplastic. Plus thermoplastic literally has to be ground off. And so it's very labor intensive if you have to make any kind of repairs versus the paint. So all 3 of them really were not.
They were pretty close.
Yeah, they didn't really care to do the thermoplastic necessarily unless you have a brand spanking new road, then they say it's worth it to do it at that point. But we can go back out and ask them to do the
Well, again,
thermoplastic.
we may not need that, if this committee wants to make a recommendation, like, we broke it down in 3 areas so that if we wanted to undertake them, phase the painting, we could do that. And I don't recall what the numbers were, but they were on the order of $13,000-15,000 per area.
What was the longevity of the previous one? What was the time frame?
On the paint.
Yes.
So I believe that if you go Cypress Grove Drive and crosswalks on Cypress Grove at Pelican Preserve, they were all done 3 years ago. Could be wrong, it might be 4, but it wasn't much longer than that, I can tell you that. So they're pretty much washed out. The sun has really done a job on them. And if we're trying to enforce people to stop at stop signs with is also a stop box on the ground, to respect people in crosswalks, you gotta be able to see the crosswalks. That may not make them stop, but at least, give them a hint that there is something on the, legal here for people to be aware of. So they're around $14,000-15,000 per area. The areas for tree line to, I think, to the main intersection with Benito and including the intersection. From that point all the way to the end of tree line, and then from Cypress Grove and tree line to the circle at the roundabout at Tree. That was the.
Doesn't make any sense to, and I'm not sure I'm everybody's thinking this through my mind all the way, but maybe the regular pavement markings just in the regular type and less expensive paint. And maybe some of the crosswalks are at the quote, at the intersection itself, use a thermal. And bifurcate this into two different type of paintings, and then take it one section at a time, so your cost, do all of Pelican Reserve, Cypress Grove later, that kind of thing. Does it make sense to mix the two?
I think it does. I think it does, because again, you want to make sure that those crosswalks are visible. And who knows when the next time we get around to recommending painting again, if we just use paint. Right, but using the thermoplastic on the crosswalks at the main intersections in particular. I think makes a lot of sense. They'd have to grind it down, like what's there now. Some of it is paint, and that's not a problem.
Right.
And some of it is thermoplastic. So they would have to grind that down. There might be something to go back to the three bidders on. Yeah.
And just keep in mind too, this will have to go to P-PAC and then to the board just because of the dollar amount. So it's well outside my spending threshold. And if we try to get around it, then that gets us in trouble. So you're better off just putting it all in one. So, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, we're totally supportive of it. But I'm just letting you know that it's not like, once you guys agree to do it, then it has to go to P-PAC and then I'll have to go to the board and then we can issue it.
Point of information, not for the minutes, Georgia. What's your sign authority?
30.
30.
Another question on that, this is Danny again. So we're looking into possibly staggering the repairs?
Yeah.
Because.
If you want to
now-
split them over fiscal years, you could, yeah.
So that would also, we do Main Street and Cypress and Prado, and just keep going annually or semi-annual.
Yeah.
2 or 3 years.
2 or 3 years, we could do that. Yeah.
Okay, because we can budget that way also.
Yeah, and I know you have a budget. I'm actually sharing my screen, so I'm not pulling it up right now. I know you guys have a like road sidewalk budget. Don't know what's left in it or anything right now. I can't look, but we just have to make sure that the money is there too. So if it's something that you wanted to take on this year, otherwise the fiscal year starts again in October, and this is something you could add to your plan to put in the budget for next year.
So this is general, but so I know we did it in phases, but I know one of the asphalt companies also did a recommendation that it should really just be all done at once. So all the paint is all fresh, continuous to the community. Because then otherwise you're gonna have sections that are worn out, sections that look good. I mean, that's all up to you, but that was just a recommendation from one of the companies to do it. Every 3 years, just refresh your paint.
It makes sense to just do it all. I mean, $40,000 really in the grand scheme of things isn't that bad.
Right.
Or even 80 with the thermoplastic, so.
3-year period, they just.
And you could just put it in your budget then to set that money aside, and then in 3 years it'll be there.
Yeah.
So,
You could do also is bifurcated, just doing the intersections with the expensive stuff and this year. And then next year, do all the regular painting.
Yeah, we could do that.
That,
Geez, the same thing.
yeah.
Geez, the same thing.
But the big problem is the intersections.
Yeah.
That's the issue, the crosswalks and the intersections, the golf cart crossings, those.
And this pricing also includes adding the lane reflectors. On along the pavement markings, so that if they fade out, if the paint faded out, the reflectors would be helpful, particularly at night.
The other thing is the golf course crossings, I think they need to look at, are there gonna be any changes, or if they don't, just keep them the way they are before you use the thermal type.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So maybe more work is needed on this subject, but I think the important point is to have the discussion that it's something that needs to be maintained, and unless we talk about it, it's something.
So I have your original scope,
Yeah.
February 16th.
Yeah.
So if you need anything changed on it, just update it
Okay.
and I'll send it back out.
I'll do that. Been running like 5 minutes to go.
yeah, I also have a hard stop. I knew and I have to go do an interview,
Okay.
so.
Discussion resuming the traffic study program. Chat. Jen.
That's okay. We can move up to that part. I didn't, I told me I send me all of them to do this. But basically, we have actually paid Traffic Solutions now, correct?
Did we pay them? Did they actually? Okay, I know there was a lot of back and forth and it was, yeah, that should have been like January or, yeah, January.
Anyway, I think what we were trying to do is, get this thing reinstated. And we weren't gonna do what we had done before, which was we had a whole schedule to pretty much cover the whole, community. We want to really focus on when people bring us issues, studying those issues, and then going back and doing basically the main roads, as I recall. So if people are good with that, then I can get together with Jen, maybe at the same time, we're gonna talk about the budget and come up with a schedule so we can actually get those signs back out on the road.
And then I'll get that to Mark.
Okay.
I showed him where everything is. We have to move from one to offices. So
Okay,
he knows where all the equipment is to go grab it.
right. And even if we don't do it all over the community, I think it's turn, because I know people talk about that. And, it's been talked about at the president's meetings, and the presidents go back and talk at their OA meeting. So people start to hear that not only do we do this, but we're keeping track of them, that there are pictures taken, et cetera, et cetera. So people,
So there's a speed monitoring deal, we put out the signs, radar signs. Sometimes we put them out and they look like they're not working, but they are. So,
I'm very familiar with it.
yeah,
okay, yeah.
yeah, so then we have it turned on later. But we get data, initially when people think it's not working, so that people aren't affected by it. Oh, there's a sign that I've got to slow down.
Yeah.
The only issue, I mean, I've spoken to, involved a lot to the committees, but, so we have it there. We do nothing with it. There is, because there is no, that's another issue with PPAC, but as far as the enforcement committee to address these issues.
What we have done with it, and then you're right, there's not an awful lot that we are doing with it, but we are using it to determine, is there in fact, or at the time, was there in fact a speeding problem? And I'm just going by memory at this point, John, you may agree or disagree, but we were seeing upwards of 85 to 88% of the traffic on the street was complying with the speed limit. If it's a 30-mile-an-hour limit, most of it is 30 or less. If it's a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit, most of it is 15 or less. There's some speeding, and you can't enforce over 50, at 15, but at least we're getting flash speed, people have become aware. We have used some of it for whether or not we were going to do something which we still need to do at Benito, and that's the issue, that one in particular, but it has been useful.
Yeah, a lot of people come and complain about speeding in their neighborhoods, and we're able to go back with data to show that, yeah, there are a couple speeders, but in some cases, very few. So
I know my neighborhood, I know the people in my neighborhood that speed. But we address it in our local meeting.
Yeah.
We remind people,
Yeah,
so.
So, Daniel, for your information also, Jennifer is able to mine a lot of data out of these studies, and she provided me with some that over a 3-month period where we could look at what kind of traffic do we have during primarily the night hours. And we use that to kind of inform our judgment in terms of additional streetlights and lighting. So we took a proposed $60,000 project, made it a $25,000 project. That could be changed otherwise. But, it was kind of like, we know that the lighting at this intersection is probably needs fixing, but is it really a safety issue? If there's no traffic, it's hard to make that argument. So these are some of the other things that we take into consideration before we green light a project to go forward.
All right, thank you.
I think we don't really follow through.
all right. Let's go to number 8 real quickly for my police department report.
No activity, I made contact with the usual. What can I say? They're just not too interested in doing enforcement, and particularly speed. A lot of them don't have radar, so they will not enforce. You can block somebody on a face situation, but that's a little harder to do in this type of community, but they're just not that interested.
You have this one that Jen had provided to us. Oh, yeah, we got them both,
Yeah.
19/23, that's what.
That was the last, yeah, that was the last,
Invoices I've seen too.
yeah, so they haven't been in here. You know, they get the schedule's running them through. And I give them a lot of latitude on the schedule when they want to work. I just put out days so we can keep track of that and, you've got a copy of it.
Yeah.
I think it's, May, I have to send out a new schedule, so I assume somebody may be doing that other than me.
Yeah, so, Dan, is that something you might be able to take on as, kind of working with Fort
Absolutely,
Myers Police Department? And-
I've worked with them before, so.
Yeah, that would be helpful to, because John's leaving, so if we can transfer your information to Danny, that
All
would
the
be terrific.
information is there, contacts, copies of everything I send them on a quarterly basis.
Okay. So, that would be great, as Don says, he communicates with them, they don't commit. And I was hopeful that the increase, the change in the rates, the pay rates that went into effect in early, I think, January.
Yeah.
Like Lee County and Fort Myers are now on the same pay
Correct.
scale.
Yeah.
That they were probably, Fort Myers was not responding, was not volunteering on their off hours to do this, but they get paid more somewhere else.
And there's only a couple officers to do anything, the rest of them just sit and do nothing. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Thank you. Okay, any other discussion?
Another item, during a president's council, we had a member of the sheriff's department come, and apparently is a community officer. And he claims to have the ear of Sheriff Marcino. So I asked him about whether we might be able to engage the sheriff's department for some of this type of duty. And he seemed to be open to it, if we talk about that.
Okay, I know both, I associate with both parties, and there is
Yeah.
between the two organizations, and I can speak with both of them. I just met with a lieutenant in the community affairs just recently.
Well, they're in the business, has been the problem, Don get.
And there was a cooperative agreement that they do not
Yeah.
infringe on each other's
Got it.
territory, basically. And that includes Sanibel PD. I've contacted them all, including the highway patrol and over the years, and it's.
Yeah.
But I can
It
talk
takes a
with both,
political change.
I can talk with both organizations and see how they vote.
But this individual, and I have an email back with his contact
If you can
information
send that
so
to me, I
forth.
appreciate that.
He indicated he had the ear of Sheriff Marcino.
Okay.
So,
I'll look into it.
ASAP, we start budgeting in April.
So so the end of the week, we need to try and have Jennifer and figures.
Yeah. And then I just have one more thing before we adjourn. There was an email that went out this morning, not pointing fingers at Dean. Please do not email yourselves, even though it was only the agenda. Georgia will take care of doing that. She did. There's an email that you'll get when she won't actually send the agenda proper out. She'll send an email out with a link to our page where you can go and get the agenda. So that'll come, and even better, so that in case she's busy or you don't see it, we have the option now on the website. When you go there where the agendas all are, you can actually sign up to get a notification as soon as the agenda is published automatically. So not only will you get it from Georgia, you'll get an automatic email from the system saying, hey, this agenda was published. It gives you a link and you can go click on it. So if you want to, any of the meetings that we do, so the Board of Supervisors, the PPAC one, the Parks and Rec one, which is really not you guys, but any of the other Pelican, you can sign up to receive notifications for any of those. I did just as a test, and I get an email from Granicus every time any agenda is published. And so then I know it's there.
What is that one?
It's on our webpage, which is gatewaydistrict.org. And it's right on the front page. If you scroll down, on the left-hand side towards the bottom is where all the agendas are. And there's a little thing right above it where you can click in to sign up. So I would suggest that as just a backup, just in case. So,
I'll try and remember.
yeah, but don't send them out.
I'm
Or
not
if you don't, if you, no, you can't.
We have a meeting.
Yeah, you can't. If you need to do that, send something to Georgia and she will do it, or send it to me and I will do it. But you cannot, you cannot. Yeah, you can't send it out. You can't send it out. The sunshine violation. I just don't want you to get in trouble.
That's not sunshine.
It is because you're communicating with the group outside of a
There's no-
regularly scheduled
There's
meeting.
no discussion.
It doesn't matter.